The wine glass sitting on our kitchen counter had lipstick on it. Not Marta's shade. She wore that subtle coral color that cost $40 a tube. This was deep red, almost burgundy, the kind that screamed, "Look at me," from across a crowded room. I picked up the glass, turning it slowly in the dim light filtering through our kitchen window. 3 in the morning, and here I was, playing detective in my own home, while my wife of 15 years slept upstairs. Or pretended to sleep. These days, I wasn't sure about anything Marta did. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Aiden Kelleher, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a pretty good life. Regional operations manager for Midwest Logistics, decent salary, nice house in Millbrook. One of those mid-sized towns where everyone knows everyone's business, but pretends they don't. Marta ran the creative department at Brennan and Associates downtown, pulling in good money designing campaigns for local businesses and the occasional national client. We had it made, or so I thought. The lipstick wasn't the only thing bothering me. There was cologne in the air, something expensive and masculine that definitely wasn't mine. I wore Old Spice like my father before me, practical, affordable, and it got the job done. This stuff smelled like it cost more than my monthly car payment. I set the glass down and walked to the laundry room. Marta's blouse from yesterday hung over the washer, and when I lifted it to my nose, the cologne smell was stronger. Mixed with it was something else, sweat, but not the kind you get from a hard day at the office. My stomach twisted into a knot that felt like it might never come undone. Couldn't sleep either? I spun around to find Marta standing in the doorway, her blonde hair tousled, wearing one of my old college t-shirts that came down to her thighs. Even at 38, she was beautiful, the kind of beautiful that made other men stare when we walked into restaurants. Lately, I'd been wondering if one particular man had been doing more than staring. "Just checking if your blouse needed special treatment," I said, holding it up. "Smells like you spilled something on it." Her face didn't change, but I caught the slight tightening around her green eyes. Probably just perfume samples from that meeting with the cosmetics client. You know how those marketing people are? They spray everything. Right, the cosmetics client. I nodded slowly. "How did that go, by the way? You never really told me about it." "Fine. Standard pitch meeting. Nothing exciting." She reached for the blouse, but I didn't let go immediately. For a moment, we stood there in a strange tug-of-war over a piece of fabric that might as well have been our entire marriage. "Aiden, what's wrong with you lately? You've been acting weird for weeks." I released the blouse and stepped back. "Maybe I'm just paying attention for the first time in a while." "Paying attention to what?" "Things. Details. Like how you've been working late every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 2 months? Like how you started going to that yoga class that somehow never makes you more flexible? Like how your phone is suddenly password protected when it never was before?" Marta's jaw tightened. "So now you're keeping tabs on me? That's healthy." "I'm not keeping tabs. I'm just noticing that my wife has become a stranger." She crossed her arms over her chest. "Maybe your wife has become a person with her own life, her own interests. Maybe that threatens you. Maybe my wife has become a liar." The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a gun. Marta's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, hurt, and finally, cold calculation. "I'm not doing this at 3 in the morning, she said. "We'll talk when you're being rational." She turned and walked away, leaving me alone with the cologne-scented blouse and a wine glass that proved I wasn't losing my mind. I waited until I heard her bedroom door close, our bedroom door, though I'd been sleeping in the guest room for the past month under the pretense of my snoring problem. Then I went to my laptop and did something I never thought I'd do. I looked up how to track a spouse's phone. Turned out it was easier than I expected. Marta and I shared an Apple account for convenience, which meant I could see her location history if I knew where to look. and after 20 minutes of YouTube tutorials, I knew exactly where to look. The results made my blood run cold. For the past 8 weeks, Marta had been making regular stops at an address I didn't recognize, 1247 Lakeshore Drive. According to Google Maps, it was a mansion in the gated Millbrook Estates community, the kind of place where tech executives and successful real estate developers lived behind tall fences and security cameras. I cross-referenced the address with the county assessor's website. The owner was Derek Lang, 37 years old, president of Lang Development Group. I recognized the name. His company had been buying up properties around the lake and turning them into luxury condos. His photo on the company website showed a man with perfect teeth, perfectly styled dark hair, and the kind of tan that came from spending winters in Florida. He looked like everything I wasn't. Where I was built like an ex-boxer, which I was, having fought amateur matches in my 20s, Derek Lang looked like he'd never thrown a punch in his life. Where I wore jeans and polo shirts, he wore suits that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Where I drove a practical Honda Civic, his company website showed him standing next to a red Ferrari. I stared at his photo for a long time, memorizing every detail of his face. Then I checked Marta's location history again. She'd been at his house yesterday from 2:30 to 6:15 p.m. Her cosmetics client meeting had supposedly run from 2 on to 4 hours. The math didn't add up, but the betrayal did. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark kitchen, listening to the house settle around me. Upstairs, Marta was probably lying awake too, wondering how much I knew, planning her next lie. The thought made me sick and angry in equal measure. But underneath the hurt and rage, something else was growing, something cold and calculating that reminded me of the fighter I used to be. Back then, I'd learned that the best way to beat an opponent wasn't to throw wild punches. It was to study their weaknesses, wait for the right opening, and strike when they least expected it. Marta thought she was so smart, so careful. Derek Lang thought he was untouchable behind his gates and his money. They had no idea that the boring husband they'd dismissed was about to become their worst nightmare. I just had to be patient. I had to be smart. And I had to be absolutely certain before I made my move. Because when I finally struck back, I wanted it to destroy them both completely. The next morning, I acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee, scrambled eggs, asked Marta about her day. She seemed relieved by my apparent return to normalcy, chatting about some campaign she was developing for a local restaurant chain. "I might be late tonight," she said, buttering her toast. "We're brainstorming concepts for the Riverside Grill account." Riverside Grill? I kept my voice casual. Didn't they just open that new location out by the lake? That's the one. The owner wants to position it as an upscale dining destination, not just another sports bar. I nodded and sipped my coffee. "Well, don't work too hard. You've been putting in a lot of extra hours lately. That's what it takes to stay competitive." She kissed my cheek before leaving, the same perfunctory peck she'd given me every morning for the past year. "Love you." "Love you too," I said automatically, watching her walk to her white BMW. The words felt like ash in my mouth. After she left, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and drove to Best Buy. I told the kid behind the counter that I was worried about break-ins in my neighborhood and needed a good security camera system. He set me up with a discreet dash cam and a small GPS tracker, both of which could be monitored from my phone. "This tracker's got a magnetic case," he explained, showing me a device about the size of a matchbox. "Battery lasts 2 weeks, and it updates location every 30 seconds. Just stick it somewhere metal on the car where it won't be seen." Perfect. I spent the afternoon installing the dash cam in my Honda and waiting for the right moment. When Marta came home around 5, earlier than expected, which made me suspicious, I volunteered to wash her car. "That's sweet of you," she said, seeming genuinely surprised. "But you don't have to do that." "I want to. When's the last time I did something nice for you?" She smiled, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married. "Thank you, Aiden. That really means a lot." The guilt in her voice was unmistakable. I took my time washing the BMW, checking for the best place to hide the tracker. Finally, I found the perfect spot. Inside the rear wheel well, where the magnetic case would stick to the metal frame but be invisible unless someone was specifically looking for it. That evening, we had dinner and watched TV like a normal couple. Marta seemed more relaxed than she'd been in weeks, probably thinking she'd successfully deflected my suspicions. She even suggested we watch one of our old favorite movies, something we hadn't done in months. But I wasn't really watching. I was thinking about Derek Lang and his lakeside mansion, wondering what my wife did during those long Tuesday and Thursday visits. The images my mind conjured made my hands clench into fists. "You're grinding your teeth," Marta said during a quiet scene. "Am I? Sorry. Work stress." She moved closer on the couch and put her head on my shoulder. "Maybe you should talk to someone about that. Dr. Peterson helped me a lot when I was dealing with anxiety last year." I almost laughed. She was seeing a therapist while cheating on me? The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Maybe I will," I said, stroking her hair. It was soft and smelled like expensive shampoo, the kind that came from the salon downtown. Another recent change I'd failed to notice until now. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. I left for work at my usual time but parked 3 blocks away and walked back, positioning myself across the street from our house with a clear view of the driveway. At 1:45 p.m., right on schedule, Marta's BMW pulled out and headed toward downtown. I followed at a distance, watching the tracker's signal on my phone. She drove past her office building without stopping, continued through downtown, and headed toward the lake. My heart pounded as the little dot on my screen moved along Lakeshore Drive and stopped at the address I'd memorized, 1247. Derek Lang's house. I parked at a public beach access point about half a mile away and walked through the woods until I had a clear view of the mansion. It was even more impressive in person, a sprawling contemporary structure with floor-to-ceiling windows and a deck that jutted out over the water. Marta's BMW sat in the circular driveway next to a red Ferrari and a black Mercedes SUV. For 2 hours, I crouched behind a fallen log and watched that house, my phone camera ready. But the windows were tinted, and I couldn't see anything useful from my position. All I could do was wait and document the timestamps. At 4:20 p.m., the front door opened. Derek Lang stepped out first, wearing khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He was taller than I'd expected, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that came from expensive personal trainers rather than real work. Marta appeared behind him, and my world tilted sideways. Her hair was mussed, her lipstick gone. She was wearing the same clothes she'd left home in, but they looked rumpled, hastily put back on. Derek's hand rested on the small of her back as they walked to her car, intimate and possessive. I took pictures. Lots of them. They talked for a few minutes by her car, standing closer than friends, closer than business associates. Then Derek cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Not a friendly peck, but a deep, passionate kiss that made my vision blur with rage. More pictures. When they finally broke apart, Marta got in her car and drove away. Derek watched her go, a satisfied smile on his face before walking back into his house. I sat in the woods for another 20 minutes, shaking with fury and trying to process what I'd witnessed. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a tawdry affair with some rich, pretty boy who probably saw her as just another conquest. But the anger was good. It burned away the last traces of doubt and self-recrimination. Now I knew exactly what I was dealing with, and I could plan accordingly. I drove home and was waiting in the kitchen when Marta returned at 5:30. "How was the brainstorming session?" I asked. "Productive. We came up with some great concepts for the lake location." She didn't meet my eyes as she hung up her purse. "I'm going to shower before dinner." "Good idea. You look a little disheveled." She froze halfway up the stairs. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that you work hard. A shower will help you relax. She studied my face for a long moment, then continued upstairs. I heard the bathroom door close and the shower start running. While she was washing off the evidence of her afternoon activities, I downloaded the photos from my phone to my laptop and studied them carefully. They were good, clear shots that left no doubt about what was happening. But they were just the beginning. I opened a new document and started typing. Evidence log. Marta's affair date, Tuesday, March 15th time, 1:45 p.m., 4:25 p.m. Location, 1247, Lakeshore Drive, Derek Lang residence. Duration, 2 hours, 40 minutes. Photos, 23 images showing intimate contact. Cover story, brainstorming session for Riverside Grill account. I saved the file in a hidden folder and encrypted it with a password Marta would never guess. Then I sat back and smiled for the first time in weeks. She thought she was so clever, but she had no idea that her boring, predictable husband was building a case against her. Every lie, every secret meeting, every betrayal was being documented and stored. When the time came to destroy her world, I'd have everything I needed. And that time was coming soon. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a man obsessed. I tracked every movement, documented every lie, and slowly pieced together the full scope of Marta's deception. The affair with Derek Lang wasn't just physical, it was emotional, financial, and apparently long-term. I discovered she'd opened a separate bank account and had been transferring money from our joint savings. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. When I traced the expenditures, they painted a clear picture. Expensive lingerie, jewelry, weekend trips to Chicago that she'd claimed were work conferences. The most damning evidence came from her laptop, which she'd left unlocked one evening while taking a bath. I found email chains going back 4 months, detailing plans for romantic getaways and discussions about their future together. In one particularly nauseating exchange, Derek had written, "Can't wait until you're free of that deadweight husband. We can finally be together properly." Marta's response, "Soon, baby. I'm working on an exit strategy. Just need to make sure I get what I deserve from the divorce." What she deserved. After 15 years of marriage, after I'd supported her through graduate school and the lean early years of her career, she was planning to take me for everything I was worth. That's when I decided to involve my old friend Tom Bradley. Big Tom, as everyone called him, was a bouncer at the Boathouse, a lakeside bar that attracted both locals and the wealthy lake community crowd. We'd boxed together in our 20s, and he'd remained one of the few people I trusted completely. More importantly, he heard all the gossip from both sides of Millbrook's social divide. I met him on a Thursday night after his shift, in the empty parking lot behind the bar. "You look like hell, Aiden," he said, lighting a cigarette. Tom was 6'4" and built like a refrigerator, with graying hair and the kind of face that discouraged troublemakers. "What's eating you?" I told him everything, the affair, the money, the divorce plans. Tom listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. "Derek Lang," he said when I finished. "Yeah, I know that piece of work. He's in here every weekend with a different woman. Married women mostly. Thinks he's God's gift because he's got money." "What else do you know about him?" Tom flicked his cigarette into the lake. "He's got enemies. Lot of husbands around here would like to see him taken down a peg. There's also rumors about his business. Cutting corners on construction, bribing inspectors. Nothing proven, but where there's smoke. I need to know everything about him. His habits, his weaknesses, his secrets. Planning something stupid? Planning something smart. For once in my life." Tom studied me for a long moment. The Aiden I used to know would have just walked up and punched the guy in the face. The Aiden you used to know didn't understand that some fights can't be won with fists. This requires strategy. He nodded slowly. "All right. Give me a week. I'll see what I can dig up." While Tom worked his sources, I continued my surveillance. I learned that Derek and Marta met twice a week, always at his house, always during the day when they thought no one would notice. I documented every meeting, every lie Marta told to cover her tracks, but I also started making subtle moves of my own. First, I visited Derek's construction sites around town. Lang Development had 3 active projects, all of them behind schedule and over budget according to the permits posted on site. I took photos of code violations, exposed wiring, improper foundations, safety hazards that could shut down construction if reported to the right authorities. Next, I started frequenting the boathouse on weekends, nursing beers and listening to conversations. Derek was a regular, just as Tom had said, and he wasn't discreet about his conquests. I heard him bragging to his friends about his latest catch, a married woman who was hot as hell and dumb enough to think I'm going to leave my wife for her. The casual cruelty of it made my blood boil. Marta might be betraying our marriage, but she genuinely believed Derek loved her. She had no idea she was just another trophy to him. That gave me an idea. The following Tuesday, instead of watching from the woods, I drove directly to Derek's house and parked across the street. When Marta arrived at her usual time, I was sitting in my Honda with a clear view of the front door. I didn't have to wait long. At 2:15, a silver Lexus pulled into the driveway behind Marta's BMW. A brunette in her 30s got out, carrying what looked like a bottle of wine. She had a key to the front door. I took pictures as she let herself in, then I settled back to wait. For the next hour and a half, I watched Derek Lang's house and wondered what was happening inside. Was he juggling 2 women at once? Was this some kind of twisted game to him? At 3:45, the brunette came out alone, looking satisfied and relaxed. She got in her Lexus and drove away without seeing Marta's car, which was parked on the other side of Derek's Ferrari. Marta didn't emerge until 4:30, right on schedule. She looked happy, glowing even, completely unaware that she'd been sharing her lover with another woman. I followed the Lexus's license plate number and ran it through a people search website. The car was registered to Jennifer Walsh, wife of prominent local attorney Michael Walsh. A quick search of social media showed her at various charity events and country club functions, always smiling, always perfectly put together. Another married woman, another man's wife being used by Derek Lang. That evening I called Tom. "I found something interesting about your boy Derek," he said without preamble. "Remember those construction rumors I mentioned? Turns out they're more than rumors. I got a buddy who works for the county inspector's office. Derek's been paying off inspectors for years, but recently one of them got cold feet and started keeping records." "What kind of records?" "Photos, documents, recordings of Derek offering bribes. The inspector was planning to take it to the state attorney general, but then he got transferred to another county. Sudden promotion, if you know what I mean." "Where are the records now?" "That's the interesting part. The inspector, guy named Rodriguez, he made copies before he left, kept them as insurance, in case Derek ever tried to come after him. He's got them stored in a safety deposit box downtown." My pulse quickened. Would he be willing to share them? For the right reason? Maybe. Rodriguez has a daughter who goes to Millbrook High. If he knew Derek was corrupting the community in other ways. "Set up a meeting." "You sure about this, Aiden? Once you start down this road, there's no going back." I thought about Marta's emails, her secret bank account, her plans to destroy me financially. I thought about Derek's casual cruelty, his treatment of women as disposable objects. I'm sure. The meeting with Rodriguez took place the following Saturday at a coffee shop in the next town over. He was a thin, nervous man in his 50s who kept checking over his shoulder as he talked. "Derek Lang is a cancer on this community," he said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "I should have exposed him years ago, but I needed the job. Now I'm safe in my new position, and I want to see him burn." Inside the envelope were photocopies of building permits, inspection reports, and bank records showing regular payments from Lang Development to various city officials. There were also photos of construction sites with serious safety violations that had been overlooked or covered up. "This is enough to destroy his business and send him to prison," Rodriguez said. "But timing is everything. You need to coordinate with the right authorities, make sure it all comes out at once so he can't cover it up or run." "Leave that to me," I said. As I drove home with the evidence, I felt a cold satisfaction settling over me. Derek Lang thought he was untouchable, protected by his money and connections. Marta thought she could betray me and walk away with half my assets. They were both about to learn how wrong they were, but first, I needed to set the stage for the final act, and that meant letting them think they were winning, right up until the moment I destroyed them both. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Tom called me on a Wednesday evening with urgent news. "Derek's throwing a party this Saturday," he said. "Big barbecue at his place. Half the town's invited, including some of the city council members who've been taking his money. Word is he's planning to announce his engagement." My blood went cold. Engagement? That's the rumor. He's been telling people he's found the one and wants to make it official. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone. Marta was upstairs, supposedly working on her laptop, but probably texting with Derek about their future together. She had no idea that her boyfriend was planning to publicly announce their relationship at a party where half the town would witness her humiliation when the truth came out. Unless Derek wasn't planning to announce his engagement to Marta at all. The thought hit me like a physical blow. What if the engagement was to someone else? What if Jennifer Walsh had left her attorney husband, or Derek had found another wealthy woman to marry? What if Marta was about to be discarded like all his other conquests? I should have felt satisfaction at the thought of her getting what she deserved. Instead, I felt a strange mixture of anger and protective instinct. Marta had betrayed me, but she was still my wife. The idea of Derek humiliating her in public made me want to put my fist through his perfect face. That's when I realized I'd been thinking about this all wrong. I'd been planning to expose them both, to destroy their affair and their reputations simultaneously. But what if there was a better way? What if I could turn them against each other first? I spent Thursday and Friday planning my strategy. On Saturday afternoon, I told Marta I was going fishing with Tom, something I did occasionally so it wouldn't arouse suspicion. "Have fun," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "I'm having dinner with Victoria tonight, so I'll probably be late." Victoria was Marta's sister, recently divorced and living in Chicago. It was a plausible cover story, except I knew Victoria was in Europe for the month, posting photos from Paris on Instagram every day. Instead of meeting Tom, I drove to Derek's house and parked in the woods where I'd observed their meetings. The party was already in full swing, with dozens of cars lining the driveway and guests spilling out onto the deck overlooking the lake. I worked my way closer through the trees until I could see and hear clearly. Derek was holding court near the outdoor kitchen, wearing white pants and a navy blazer that screamed Yacht Club. He had his arm around a woman I didn't recognize, a redhead in her 40s with the kind of jewelry that suggested serious money. There was no sign of Marta anywhere. I listened to Derek's conversation with growing understanding. He was introducing the redhead as his fiance, describing their whirlwind romance and upcoming wedding. The guests were congratulating them, asking about wedding plans and honeymoon destinations. Marta wasn't invited to the party. She wasn't part of Derek's announcement. She was just another side piece, kept separate from his real life and real relationships. The bastard was playing her completely. I was so focused on Derek's performance that I almost missed the silver Lexus pulling into the driveway. Jennifer Walsh got out, looking confused and upset. She pushed through the crowd of guests, her face getting redder as she took in the scene. "Derek!" she called out, her voice carrying across the deck. "What the hell is this?" The party went quiet. Derek's face went pale as he saw Jennifer approaching, his fiancée still clinging to his arm. "Jennifer, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to me for months? That you told me you were going to leave your girlfriend for me?" The redhead stepped back, her expression shifting from confusion to anger. "Girlfriend? Derek, who is this woman? Nobody important, Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. That's when I saw my opening. I pulled out my phone and called Marta. Hey, honey, I said when she answered. Change of plans. Tom had to cancel, so I thought I'd surprise you at Victoria's. What restaurant are you going to? There was a long pause. Restaurant? For dinner, with Victoria, remember? Another pause, longer this time. Oh, right. We're at that new place downtown, the Italian one. Which Italian place? There are 3 downtown. Antonio's. Look, Aiden, I can't really talk right now. No problem. I'll just drive over and join you. I haven't seen Victoria in months. No! The word came out sharp and panicked. I mean, it's just girl talk. You'd be bored. I don't mind. See you in 20 minutes. I hung up before she could respond, then started my car and drove toward Derek's house. My phone rang twice, Marta calling back, but I didn't answer. I parked at the end of Derek's driveway and walked toward the party. The confrontation between Derek and his women was still going on, with raised voices and accusations flying. Other guests were starting to back away, sensing drama. That's when Marta's BMW came racing up the driveway. She got out of her car looking frantic, her hair disheveled and her makeup smeared. She'd obviously rushed over after my phone call, probably terrified that I was about to expose her lie about dinner with Victoria. But she stopped short when she saw the crowd of people, the party decorations, and Derek in the middle of what was clearly a very public domestic dispute. Derek, she called out, her voice uncertain. Every head turned toward her. Derek looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Marta, what are you doing here? You didn't tell me about the party. I thought... She stopped, taking in the scene more carefully. The redhead with the engagement ring. Jennifer Walsh with tears of rage streaming down her face. The crowd of witnesses watching everything unfold. Oh my God, Marta whispered. What is this? That's when I stepped out from behind a parked car, my phone in my hand, recording everything. This, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, is my wife meeting her boyfriend's other girlfriends. The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop on the wooden deck. Derek recovered first, his face twisting with rage. What the hell are you doing here, Kelleher? Protecting my investment, I said, walking closer. See, my wife has been stealing money from our joint account to fund her affair with you. I figured I should see where my money was going. Marta's face went white. Aiden, please. Please what? Please don't tell everyone that you've been screwing Derek Lang every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 4 months. Please don't mention that you opened a secret bank account and transferred $15,000 from our savings to pay for your little love nest. The crowd was riveted now, phones coming out to record the drama. Derek's carefully cultivated image was crumbling in real time. You're insane, Derek said, but his voice shook. Marta, tell him he's wrong. Marta looked around at the faces staring at her. Derek's fiance, Jennifer Walsh, dozens of Millbrook's most prominent citizens, and seemed to realize that her secret was out, her reputation destroyed. I can't, she whispered. Jennifer Walsh stepped forward, her anger now focused on Derek. You told me she was just a business associate. You said you were helping her with some marketing project. And you told me, the redhead added, her voice dripping with disgust, that you'd never been married and didn't have any serious relationships. Derek looked around desperately, trapped by his own lies. Ladies, if we could just discuss this privately. No, I said, still recording. I think we should discuss it right here, in front of everyone. Let's talk about how you've been bribing city inspectors to overlook safety violations at your construction sites. Let's talk about the 3 buildings you've put up in the past 2 years that don't meet code requirements. Derek's face went from pale to gray. You don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out the manila envelope Rodriguez had given me. Building permits, inspection reports, bank records showing regular payments to city officials. I've got it all, Derek. And first thing Monday morning, it's all going to the state attorney general's office. The party guests were backing away now, sensing that they were witnessing something that could destroy careers and end marriages. Several city council members I recognized were quietly slipping toward their cars. "Aiden," Marta said, tears streaming down her face, "can we please go home and talk about this?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was beautiful, even with her makeup ruined and her face red from crying. For a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her 15 years ago. Then I remembered the emails about getting what she deserved from our divorce. "No, Marta, we can't go home and talk about this, because home is where you've been lying to me every single day while planning to take me for everything I'm worth." I turned to address the crowd, making sure my voice carried clearly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to remember this moment. Remember that Derek Lang is a corrupt businessman who bribes officials and endangers public safety. Remember that he's a serial cheater who lies to women and discards them when he's done. And remember that my wife, Marta Kelleher, is a woman who breaks her marriage vows and steals from her husband to fund her affairs." The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Then, one by one, the guests began to leave. No one wanted to be associated with the scandal that was about to engulf Derek Lang. Derek himself seemed to realize that his world was collapsing. His fiancée had already stormed off, and Jennifer Walsh was getting into her Lexus with a look that promised expensive legal trouble ahead. "This isn't over, Kelleher," he said, but there was no fight left in his voice. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's completely over." I walked back to my car, leaving Marta standing in Derek's driveway with tears streaming down her face. She called my name, but I didn't turn around. The revenge I'd planned had worked better than I'd ever imagined. By Monday morning, everyone in Millbrook would know the truth about Derek Lang and my wife. By the end of the week, Derek would be facing criminal charges and financial ruin. But as I drove home to our empty house, I realized that revenge, even perfect revenge, doesn't heal the wound of betrayal. It just makes sure everyone else can see it bleeding. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to Tom's apartment and sat in his kitchen while he made coffee and listened to my account of the evening's events. "Jesus, Aiden," he said when I finished. "You really went nuclear on them." "They had it coming." "Maybe. But what now? You can't exactly go back to playing happy family after that performance." He was right, of course. There was no coming back from what I'd done. I'd publicly humiliated my wife and destroyed any possibility of reconciliation. Even if I'd wanted to forgive her, which I didn't, the entire town now knew about her affair. "I'll file for divorce Monday morning," I said. "With the evidence I've got, she won't get a penny more than what's legally required." "And Derek?" "Derek's finished. Rodriguez's evidence will put him in prison, and even if it doesn't, his reputation is destroyed. No one will do business with him after tonight." Tom nodded slowly. "You know, 5 years ago I would have said you should have just beaten the crap out of him and been done with it. And now? Now, I think you found a better way to fight. You destroyed him without throwing a punch." I spent that night on Tom's couch, staring at the ceiling and thinking about 15 years of marriage that had ended in a stranger's driveway. My phone buzzed constantly, texts from Marta begging me to come home, voicemails that I deleted without listening to. Sunday morning brought a new development. Tom's phone rang at 7 a.m., and he answered with a grunt. "Yeah? What? Are you serious? All right, thanks for the heads up." He hung up and looked at me with a mixture of amusement and concern. "That was my buddy at the police station. Derek Lang was arrested an hour ago." I sat up on the couch. "For what?" "Assault. Apparently he showed up at Jennifer Walsh's house around midnight, drunk and belligerent. When her husband answered the door, Derek took a swing at him. Bad move. Michael Walsh is a former Marine." "Is Derek okay?" He'll live. Broken nose, black eye, and a night in jail. Walsh is pressing charges, and with Derek's reputation already in the toilet after last night, his lawyer will get him out. Maybe. But here's the interesting part. Jennifer Walsh is filing for divorce, and she's hired the nastiest attorney in the state. Word is, she's going after her husband for half of everything, and she's claiming the affair with Derek was emotional manipulation. I had to admire the irony. Derek's attempt to juggle multiple women had backfired spectacularly, and now he was facing legal battles on multiple fronts. My own phone rang then. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Mr. Kelleher, this is Sarah Chen from Channel 7 News. I was wondering if you'd be willing to comment on the allegations against Derek Lang. What allegations? The corruption charges. The State Attorney General's office issued a statement this morning saying they're investigating Lang Development for bribery and building code violations. We understand you provided evidence in this case? I looked at Tom, who was grinning. Apparently, Rodriguez had moved faster than expected. No comment, I said, and hung up. But the calls kept coming. Local reporters, bloggers, even a freelancer from a Chicago paper who'd gotten wind of the story. By noon, Derek Lang's arrest and the corruption investigation were trending on local social media. I finally turned off my phone and took a long walk around the lake, thinking about what came next. The revenge phase was over. Derek was finished, and Marta's reputation was in ruins. Now I had to figure out how to rebuild my own life. When I got back to Tom's apartment, there was a car waiting in the parking lot. Marta's BMW. She was sitting on Tom's steps, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept. "Aiden, please," she said when she saw me. "We need to talk." "No, we don't." "Yes, we do. I know you're angry." "Angry?" I stopped walking and stared at her. "Marta, angry doesn't begin to cover what I'm feeling right now. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we can work through this. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. What you did was plan and execute a months-long betrayal of our marriage while stealing money to fund your affair." She stood up, wiping tears from her face. "I know how it looks. It looks like you're a cheating, lying thief who was planning to divorce me and take half my assets, because that's exactly what you are." The words hit her like physical blows. She actually stepped backward. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered. "It just happened." "Bullshit. Nothing just happened. You made a series of deliberate choices, and now you're dealing with the consequences. Derek said he loved me. He said we were going to be together." Despite everything, I felt a flicker of sympathy for her. She'd been played by a master manipulator, used and discarded like all of Derek's other conquests. "Derek Lang is a sociopath who collects married women like trophies," I said. "He was never going to leave his life for you. You were just entertainment." Fresh tears streamed down her face. "I know that now. God, Aiden, I've been so stupid." "Yes, you have. And now the whole town knows it." She looked around the parking lot as if expecting paparazzi to jump out from behind cars. "What am I supposed to do? I can't show my face anywhere. People are already talking." "That's not my problem anymore." "But I'm your wife." "No," I said quietly. "You're the woman I used to be married to. There's a difference." I walked past her toward Tom's door, but she grabbed my arm. "Aiden, please, I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling, I'll quit my job, You'll what? Promise never to lie to me again? Promise never to steal from me again? Promise never to cheat on me again?" I shook my head. "Those are promises you should have kept the first time you made them." "So that's it? 15 years of marriage, and you're just throwing it all away?" I turned to face her one last time. "I'm not throwing anything away, Marta. You already did that." I went inside and closed the door, leaving her standing in the parking lot. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car for 20 minutes, before finally driving away. That was the last time I saw my wife. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. With the evidence I'd gathered, Marta's attorney advised her to accept a minimal settlement rather than risk a trial where her affair and theft would be made public record. She kept her car and her personal belongings, but everything else, the house, the savings, the retirement accounts, stayed with me. Derek Lang fared much worse. The corruption investigation led to criminal charges, and his construction company collapsed within a month. His assets were frozen pending trial, his wealthy fiancée disappeared, and he faced lawsuits from multiple women claiming he'd defrauded them emotionally and financially. The last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment across town, working as a used car salesman while awaiting trial. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen, our old kitchen, now just mine, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. The house felt different without Marta's presence, but not worse. Quieter, maybe. More honest. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Mrs. Carraway, my elderly neighbor, holding a casserole dish. "I thought you might like some homemade lasagna," she said. "You've been looking a bit thin lately." "That's very kind of you, Mrs. Carraway." She handed me the dish, then hesitated. "I hope you don't mind me saying, but you seem much happier now. More relaxed." "Do I?" "Oh yes. You were so tense before, always looking worried. Now you smile when you work in your garden. It's nice to see." After she left, I thought about what she'd said. Was I happier? It was hard to tell. The betrayal still hurt. Probably always would. But the constant anxiety was gone. The feeling that something was wrong, but not knowing what. The sense that I was living with a stranger who was pretending to be my wife. Now I knew exactly where I stood. Alone, but not lonely. Free to rebuild my life on my own terms. That evening, Tom called with news. "Derek Lang took a plea deal," he said. 2 years in minimum security, plus restitution to the city. He'll be out in 18 months if he behaves himself. "What about Marta?" "Heard she moved to Chicago. Got a job with some marketing firm there. Fresh start, I guess." A fresh start. Maybe that's what we both needed. I hung up the phone and walked out to my back deck, looking over the yard Marta and I had planted together years ago. The roses she'd loved were still blooming, but I'd added vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, herbs, practical things that served a purpose. The sun was setting over Millbrook, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of boats on the lake, families enjoying the summer evening. For the first time in months, I felt something that might have been peace. The revenge was complete. Derek Lang had lost everything: his business, his reputation, his freedom. Marta had lost her marriage, her home, and her standing in the community. They'd both paid the price for their betrayal. But more importantly, I'd won something back: my self-respect, my independence, and the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. The quiet, predictable husband they'd dismissed had proven to be their worst nightmare. I smiled as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Tomorrow was a new day, and for the first time in years, I was looking forward to it.